Hi guys, how are you? I hope you're good. Today I'm here for another book review. Today I will be reviewing The Troop by Nick Cutter. I just read this, finished reading this a couple days ago, and still thinking about it. Still traumatized by it. What a book. What a book. I'm really looking forward to talking about this book with you guys today. So before we get into the book itself, let's talk a little bit about the author Nick Cutter. I have previously read books from Nick Cutter before. I've only read The Deep, and unfortunately I was not a fan of that book at all, but I really wanted to give this author another go because so many people recommend Nick Cutter when you talk about horror books because his books are just very popular and well known. There's The Troop, there is The Deep, and there's also Little Heaven. I think there's another one. But when I looked into this author, I found out that Nick Cutter is actually a pen name. So many authors that I look into, they're actually pen names for other people. It's interesting that keeps happening. But Nick Cutter is actually a pen name for, I believe, Craig Davidson is his real name, and he's Canadian, which is really neat, and he actually has two different pen names. So Craig Davidson is the real person, but he's got two pen names, so if you're interested in his other works, you can go Google, search, find his other stuff. So I thought that was interesting to share with you. I don't really know much about the author besides that, so let's get into The Troop. The Troop was published back in 2014, and I feel as if it's gotten more buzz as the years have gone by. This book just seems to pop up time and time again, and I've always been somewhat curious, and this year I finally decided to give it a read. I didn't know much about this book before going in. I kind of jumped in blindly, to be honest, so this was quite a bit of a shock because I just didn't know what I was getting myself into. And I would say if you're thinking about picking up this book, look into the summary, figure out what this is about, because it's something that I think not everyone can handle, to say the least. So The Troop follows a group of Boy Scouts as they go on a weekend camping trip with their scoutmaster on this little island just a couple miles from the mainland. And when they're on this island together, they are planning to have a fun time. It's a group of boys and their scoutmaster, but a boat lands on the island, and inside the boat is this guy, and this guy is sick. He's really sick, and so the scoutmaster, because he's a doctor, he decides to help this guy. And little do they know that this guy is sick with a tapeworm. But it's not just a regular tapeworm, it's a tapeworm that is bioengineered and essentially eats you from the inside out. It will make you so hungry, hungrier than you've ever been in your life, and it will eat all of your nutrients, and when it's done eating you up, it will basically hatch a lot of eggs inside of you, and you'll almost bubble up, and then you'll just die, and the worms will kind of pop out of you in a way. Does that sound disgusting? Because it's pretty disgusting. So the story itself follows these Boy Scouts. It's a group of friends. They're only around 13, 14 years old, and it's their survival story. They're stuck on this island. They can't go anywhere, and they soon start to figure out that maybe they're not, maybe no one's gonna come and rescue them. Maybe no one wants to save them, or maybe something's going on. Maybe people do know what's going on there, and maybe the government has gotten involved, and maybe they can escape, because if they try to, maybe they'll die or they'll get killed. There's so many things going on. This is just a wild, crazy story, and it just kept me turning those pages. My goodness. So that's all I'm gonna tell you plot-wise of the story. I've told you a lot, but okay, this story as a whole, I want to say right off the bat, if you are a fan of horror and you haven't read this is a must-read, because it is just chilling and scary and spooky and gross, but it does everything that I think you want in a really good horror book. It follows these characters, and it's filled with so much intrigue. We get a lot of backstory on the boys, and we see a lot of things on the outside as well, because, you know, it's really hard to follow these characters and not really know what's going on with, I guess, the tapeworm, the source of that, like where did that come from? And this book, each chapter gives you little interviews and articles on what actually happened, what caused this incident, because at the end of the story, or at the beginning of the story, you find out that this is something that happened, and we're kind of like getting an inside look on this incident that happened and just the, you know, everything involved with that. So it's super, super intriguing. The setup of this story is very, very it's done very well. The characters are very fascinating because, you know, we're following these kids, and it's an adult horror book, but at the same time I feel like this could also bring in some younger readers because we follow younger characters. But this book delves into some really, really dark stuff that I think not everyone can handle at the same time. But like I said, if you enjoy horror, then this is definitely a must read. I want to say that, you know, as for writing goes, writing style, I don't think Nick Cutter is doing anything special here with his writing, but I will say he's really good at descriptions on things that I would never have wanted to be described to. Does that make sense? You know, he really does not hold back. This writer just writes things that I never want to read again. I never want to think about again, even though I still think about it, the fact that these things happened. I do want to say that, like I said, this is not for everyone. If you're squeamish, if you can't really deal with maybe like body horror and just really descriptive descriptions on just gross things, if that's not for you, then this is definitely not the book for you, unfortunately. But I will say that this book also deals with some animal abuse. Animal abuse is mentioned in this book, and I think it's done because we need to figure out a backstory on a certain character, so some things are shared. But this book is so descriptive, and honestly to the point where I almost had to put this down a couple times because I don't like reading about animal abuse, and it happens several times in this book. So just know going into that is something that happens in this, and if that's not something that you can read either, then maybe skip this, maybe don't read it, or maybe just skip the chapter that portion is included, because it's so sad. And I struggle with reading stuff like that, but I was able to make it through, and I think overall it's still a really good book. But just know that there is animal abuse in this. I think on 2 occasions, so just be aware of that. One thing that I really love about this story so much is, of course, the survival aspect of this story, because it's a group of boys set on this island. It's very Lord of the Flies-esque in that way, and I just love a good survival story. I love a good story where also you have a lot of characters that turn on one another because they will do anything and everything in order to live. And I love to see how people, in a way, I guess it's kind of bad that I love to see it, but I think it's really interesting to see when characters, or see the breaking point of certain characters and people in a book, because it's just so fascinating to see something that once was so great then crumble, or just to see the extent that a human can go through and what they can take. I don't know, is that weird? But I just thought it was so fascinating. So I really, really enjoyed that book because of that survival aspect, and I really loved, though it was gross, right? Though the worm and the pathogen, the thing that's killing them in this story, is absolutely disgusting. Like, the thought of a worm inside of you just eating you is so gross. But I thought at the same time, I just wanted to know more about the worm, because I just, like, okay, finding out where this worm came from, how it came to be, why it was there, just everything about it was, again, so interesting and disgusting all at the same time, but I couldn't get enough of it. I was equally disgusted but equally entertained. I was like, ew, gross, stop, but wait, hold on, I want to know more, tell me more. That was me the entire time. So I can't honestly say if this book will be for everyone. I know a lot of people really enjoyed this book, and I can definitely see why, because I loved it so much. I loved it, but at the same time, I'm so grossed by it. I don't know how to fully describe that in words to where that makes sense, but that's just how I feel. This book was disgusting. ugh, but at the same time, I loved it. How does that work? I don't know. I guess Nick Cutter is just able to write it in a way that is enjoyable enough in some fashion. So that's The Troop. The Troop was a ride, not a fun ride, a gross ride, but nonetheless, I really enjoyed it, and I would love to know if you have read this. What are your thoughts and opinions? Please let me know, because this was one of the weirdest, wackiest stories I've ever read, and I will continue to read more from this author, probably, just because I'm curious to see what he's gonna put out next, or has put out. I think I might check out more of his work in the future, even though his other book that I read from him I wasn't a big fan of. I did enjoy this one, so I have a little bit of hope for what he has to come in the future. Anyway, I think those are my thoughts. I have nothing else to say. That is The Troop. The Troop is fine. It's fine. Anyway, I hope you guys have a good one, and I will see you for another review hopefully soon. Bye.